So our first speaker, as Darren mentioned, will be Mine Yücel. Mine is the Senior Vice President and Senior Research Advisor at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. She's an expert on regional and energy issues, publishing numerous articles on energy and regional growth. She's the past president of the National Association for Business Economics. She serves on the board of the Global Interdependence Center and the University of Texas at Dallas Energy Board. She was president of the International Association of Energy Economics in 2011 and president of the United States Association of Energy Economics in 2005. She's also served on the executive boards of these organizations. Before joining the bank in 1989, Yücel was an assistant professor of economics at Louisiana State University. She has a BS and an MS in mathematics from Bogazici University in Istanbul, Turkey, and a PhD in economics from Rice University here in Houston. With that, I'm happy to invite Mine up to the stage.
All right, thank you, Jay. I'm just going to grab a water here. All right, good morning. I'm going to give you a very brief update on the Texas economy to start us off and set the stage for the rest of our speakers. So, this is the usual disclaimer. These are my views, not the Fed's. We had relatively slow growth in 15 and 16 with the oil bust, but after that we came back and got on track in 2017, and last year our growth was the fastest since 2014. The labor market has been very, very tight. In fact, the December unemployment rate of 3.7 was the lowest since 1970. And last year, the goods producing sectors were really, really strong, but then they slowed toward the end of the year. Not just goods, but also services. So every sector slowed a little bit toward the end of the year. This year, we think growth is going to be slower than last year. And the reasons are lower oil prices, tight, very, very tight labor market, slower global growth, slower national growth, and in addition, there's a lot of uncertainty among businesses. If you talk to people, and we have our surveys, both regionally and nationally and globally, so this is affecting decision-making in the business sector. It's investment decisions, hiring decisions. So our forecast for this year is between 1% and 2%. So last year we were 2.4. We don't think we're going to get up there this year. If we will, that'll be a great surprise. Okay, so here you see Texas and U.S. job growth. And usually, in general, we outpace the nation in job growth. And you can see that. The red is the U.S., the blue is Texas. And you see over there that in 2015, 2016, we were lower than the U.S. because of the oil bust. But after that, we came back. And 2017, that's 2.1 versus 1.5 for the nation. And last year, 2.4 versus 1.8 for the nation. Now, looking at employment growth across the different metros, this is yearly growth starting in 2016. And you see that the energy metros actually did make a comeback. So Houston moved up, and so did Corpus. And Corpus, of course, there's a lot of petrochemicals in Corpus. And then Fort Worth is doing quite well because of the logistics industry. Dallas actually decelerated a little bit, and that's because Dallas had been growing so fast because of all the relocations of companies. So that's sort of slowed. It can't be sustained. Plus, it's really, really tight in terms of labor. So which sectors are growing, or which last year, looking at last year, what happened? So what you see here is year growth. It says year to date, I think. No, it's for the year, whole December to December. And this is ranked with the share of the largest industry, which is trade and transportation. That's about 20% of employment, all the way to the smallest, which is energy and information. And so remember, Texas grew 2.4%. The goods industries, which is construction, manufacturing, and oil and gas, grew 4.6%. So quite a bit faster than the overall Texas as a whole. And then the energy industry grew about 10%. Now, the energy, it's only 2% of employment, so a 10% growth is about 21,000 jobs. So the construction sector was pretty strong, added about 31,000 jobs, and the manufacturing sector added about 31,000 jobs. The service sector grew about the same rate as the state, and the fastest growing sector was professional business services. That's a pretty big sector, about 14% of jobs, and added about 66,000 jobs last year. So in Houston, I don't have a chart for that, but Houston manufacturing was booming, about 7.5% growth, and then education and health was next, so that was 3.4%. The other sectors were either same rate as same, just a little bit above or below, nothing too spectacular. So now, one of the reasons for our strong growth is that we have a lot of people that come into the state from other states and internationally. So last year, in 2018, the 12 months ending in July, and this is annual data, we had a total of 188,000 people coming into Texas. Of that, 83,000 was domestic, and 105,000 was international. But Texas is also a top importer of jobs and companies from other states. And so what you're seeing here, this is a study that was done at the Dallas Fed, and the data, unfortunately, is very lagged, so it ends in 2013. But this is looking at company relocations into the state. So from 2000 to 2013, you see that Texas was the largest recipient of jobs and companies from other states, and the state that exported the most was California. Now, 2 points to make about the results here. Number one, this is a long-term trend, so it's from 2000 to 2013. And Texas is a favored destination. It's sort of, we have our traditional advantages, and you all know that. Favorable business climate, central location, large size, large market, accessibility of ports, diverse industrial structure, and of course a resource base that's plentiful. So this is what sort of draws people and companies to the state. Also, though, one other point to make is the number of jobs isn't that large. So you see over those 13 or 14 years, the number of jobs is about 100,000. So that's about 1.5% of all jobs that we actually add annually into the state. So incentives and all that, they're good, but the number of jobs that are gained from that aren't huge. So we actually have an organic growth rate that's way dwarfs those relocations. Now, where do these companies and people come from? This is the relocation of jobs. Well, as I said, California leads in the net export of jobs to Texas, and then we have Louisiana, Oklahoma, and South Carolina. And I honestly don't know why South Carolina. Okay, so Dallas Fed, you may know that we have a monthly manufacturing and services index, and what you see here are the headline indexes from those two surveys. The TMOS is manufacturing, we have a production, and then the other one is revenue from services. And the point to make here is that you see that they really took a dip down at the end of the year. Both the services revenue and manufacturing production. So now this is a diffusion index, so it doesn't mean activity is contracting because they're positive. It just means, though, that it has slowed. The growth has slowed. A lot of deceleration in these sectors. So we asked, then we did a little informal survey to our manufacturers to say, okay, why is it slowing? And here are and we said, list your top 3 reasons. And here are the reasons that they gave us. Increasing uncertainty causing customers to reduce orders. Tariffs hurting domestic demand through higher input costs and prices. Weaker global economy hurting demand. And labor constraints limiting production capacity. So this is what our manufacturers told us. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the sectors a little bit more in detail. So let me talk about the housing sector quickly. So these are the indicators that we look at for new homes. So that's both multifamily and single family. And by the way, it says single family starts, that's just starts. Single family starts are both multifamily and single family. So what you see here is that we're seeing a weakening in all of these indicators. If you look at the permits have been sort of trending up, but they turned down in July and now are about 3% less than they were a year ago. So why is that? Number one, house prices are really high. So affordability is being, it's gone down in all the Texas metros. And mortgage rates have also gone up somewhat, so that's also affecting demand negatively. On the supply side, our contacts are telling us development costs have really gone up. So land costs are up, and so some of the numbers are not making for the deals anymore, is what they tell us. And of course, labor constraints have really increased labor costs. Now, looking at the permits, that's the red line, and they have also come down quite a bit, down 43% year over year in the November numbers. And for this, we built a lot of apartments, actually. So again, that's sort of a slowing in that sector because of the previous out of building. Looking at starts, so that's, as I said, both multifamily and single family, that's come down as well year over year, about 16% less than what it was last year, but we think this is being driven by multifamily rather than single family. Here are home prices for the major metros, and so home price growth has been decelerating. This is home price growth, but still positive for most of the cities. For Texas, the median house price is $235,000, and it's up on a real basis 1.6% year over year. So Houston, you see, has been the weakest. That was the green, especially after the oil bust, but it's been sort of coming back up. And the last number actually is about 1.8% year over year. This is a 3-month moving average, so all the numbers that I mentioned you may not see over there. For Houston, the median house price is $238,000, and we have about 4 months of inventory here. So it's a pretty tight market still. Dallas was the strongest, but because it's been so, the prices have been so high, that appreciation actually has turned negative in the last month. And Austin has the highest median house price, and its appreciation also slowed. So house prices, because they were so high, they are still at record highs. They're sort of, the appreciation is slowing. And part of the reason the demand is slowing is because of affordability. So what you're seeing here is an affordability index, and you can see that affordability is coming down in almost all those major metros. So the affordability index is the share of homes sold in that area that would have been affordable to a family earning the median income in that area. So you see here that Dallas is the least affordable, followed by Austin. In Houston, the affordability index is 58.1. That means 58.1% of the area's homes are affordable to a household with median income. And median income in Houston is $75,000. Okay, so I'm an energy person, and I have to talk about energy. We're in Houston. So as you may have heard, last year, the U.S. actually surpassed Russia to become the #1 producer of oil in the world. So Russia's #2, and the Saudis are #3. But you'll know that Saudis have a lot of excess capacity, so they could actually, turn on the taps and produce more. But right now, here's where we stand. And at the end of the year, oil production was around 11.6, depending on which agency you look at, 11.6 to 11.8 million barrels per day. The EIA, which is the Energy Information Administration, has not, the data only go up to October, so we'll see what they come up with in a couple of months. But 11.6 million barrels per day is a lot of oil coming out of the U.S., and 44% of this comes from Texas. And so what you're seeing here is the Texas rig count and Texas output. So the number for production, which is the blue, for October, it was 4.7 million barrels per day. What you're seeing, the dot over there is the weekly estimates. They're not very reliable, but they do show you that output has been continuing to go up. And if you look at year over year, Texas actually added more than 1 million barrels per day last year. That's a lot of output, and most of it is, of course, coming from the Permian. Now, the rig count you see in red there, the rig count actually has been pretty flat since May. And in fact, if you look at, so this ends in December, but if you look at the weekly numbers from Baker Hughes, the last week it went down by 9 in Texas, and for the US it went down by 20. So the rig count has actually fallen somewhat in the most recent data. So you might say, okay, how come output's going up without that rig count, with the rig count being flat? And the reason is, one, these rigs are really very productive. They're very efficient, so you can drill a lot of wells with one rig. You sort of move them around, walk them, as they say. And then we also have, even if we don't drill any more wells, we can still produce because we have drilled but uncompleted wells. And those are what we call DUCs. And Texas has about 5,800 DUCs. And about 4,000 of these, I think, are in the Permian. So we can still produce. Of course, it depends on the price. If the producers think the price is going to go up, they're not going to frack those DUCs yet. Anyway, so we're not sure though this year where Texas output is going to be. Actually, we think it's not going to be as high as it was last year. Number one, the decline rates are pretty high from those wells that we drilled last year, so we're going to see a decline there. And of course, lower oil prices. Now, with the boom last year, there were also a lot of constraints in the Permian, a lot of cost increases, pipeline congestion, very, very tight labor market. And because of the pipeline congestion, you'll remember that there were huge differentials between Midland WTI and the Cushing WTI. That has been somewhat alleviated, but again, that's one of the concerns that our survey respondents tell us that's the biggest concern, pipeline congestion, pipeline bottlenecks, actually, I shouldn't say congestion. It will probably be alleviated by the end of the year, but we'll see. And those margins have come down between the two WTIs. Okay, but still, we think that output, both in the US and in Texas, is not going to be as high as it was last year. Now, contacts also tell us that for the pipelines, the steel tariffs have also increased costs a lot because the only supplier of some of that pipe they need is actually coming from China, and those costs have gone up. Okay, so we do a quarterly energy survey. And here we ask a lot of questions. You can see the number there. We have business activity, capital expenditures, employment, and all that kind of stuff. And so what you see is this year's answers or the indexes. And what I'd like to point out is in the fourth quarter, that business activity index was almost zero. So this is people saying activity is not going to increase from where it was. And then if you look at the company outlook, that actually turned negative in the fourth quarter. So, the weaker responses from the energy industry toward the year end, and of course it's because of lower oil prices. And then if you look at the uncertainty index, it's really shot up in the fourth quarter. And then the last one is what we ask people, what's the price that's going to be next year? What do you think the average price is going to be? And in 2019, the answer was $60. So we'll see if hopefully we get there. Now, one other slide from the survey. So we ask special questions every time, but there's one specific special question that we ask every year in the first quarter, and that is this one, which is, what WTI price does your firm need to profitably drill a new well? So these are the break-even prices from our respondents, and you can see that it changes from basin to basin. Even in a basin, it sort of differs it ranges quite a bit. So if you look at the very leftmost there, Permian, in the Midland Basin, it goes up from 20 to 70. So the break-evens are they range quite a bit, but that black line is the average. And so what this tells you is that the $65 price that we had last year was actually, almost everybody made money. For $52, not as much. And then when you talk to contacts, they say if the price is about 45 and stays there for a while, we're going to see some bankruptcies in the oil patch. So hopefully we won't go down to 45 and stay there. Okay, and one last slide, and that's about our exports. So our exports had been on a growth trend despite the rise in the dollar. So usually a rise in the dollar means our exports become more expensive and then demand for them goes down. But what you're seeing here is the dollar's been going up and our exports have been going up. And what that is mainly energy exports. So you'll remember at the end of 2015, we lifted the crude oil export ban. With that, we started exporting a lot of oil and gas. I mean, it's just crude. We still export a lot of gas, but there was no ban on gas. But we started exporting a lot of oil, and that's part of the reason that's going up. We have up to the third quarter here, and Texas exports went up by 8% through the third quarter. Oil and gas exports were up 108%. And then we also, of course, export chemicals and refined products, that's gasoline and diesel, and those were up, gasoline and diesel up 32% and chemicals 25%. So if you look at the other exports, they're either negative or just flat. So it's really energy exports that's driving the exports right now. Now, so I'm going to sum up. Well, let me just say one thing about exports is that the international economy is actually slowing. And so that sort of says that demand for our exports may not be growing as fast this year compared to what we had last year. So to sum up, we had a really good year last year, 2.4% growth, added a lot of jobs, unemployment rate the lowest it has been since 1970. We do expect to downshift a little bit in 2019. The risks are slower global growth, slower national growth, lower oil prices, very tight labor market, and continued uncertainty. I mean, this uncertainty, there's a global uncertainty index, and that right now it's higher than where it was during the Great Recession. So there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and as I said, that's bad for business decision making. So given the data that we have right now, our forecast is between 1% and 2%. So there are some clouds on the horizon, but still it's growth. Not great growth, but okay growth. So I'll leave you with that. Oh.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks a lot, Mene, for everything except for stealing my papers. And it was great. It's now my privilege to introduce Janiece Longoria. So as I was reading through Janiece's bio, the two things that struck me were really just excellence and service, and I think you'll get the sense of that. Janiece is the chairman of the Houston Port Authority, the leading economic engine for the Greater Houston region, since she was unanimously appointed by the City of Houston and the County of Harris in 2013. She chairs the Port Commission's Audit Committee, Community Relations Committee, and serves on the Governance Committee and Pension and Benefits Committee. It's also my understanding that her term of service is ending this month after a very nice, incredible run. So how about a round of applause for her? The other part that is obviously very near and dear to me and to all of us, she serves as a regent for the University of Texas system that oversees the flagship University of Texas at Austin, as well as 8 other academic institutions and 6 healthcare institutions, including the MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. She also serves on the board of directors for Superior Energy Services, a public company based in Houston, on the board of the Dallas Federal Reserve, Houston Division, the Texas Medical Center, the Greater Houston Partnership, and MD Anderson Services Corporation. She's received numerous honors and recognitions, including the Distinguished Alumnus Award at UT, the President's Citation for Exemplary Service from UT, the Distinguished Alumnus Award for Community Service from UT Law, and the Sandra Day O'Connor Award for Board Excellence. She's an honors graduate of the University of Texas and received her JD from Texas Law. Please join me in welcoming Regent Longoria to the stage.
Well, gosh, with that, hook 'em horns. First of all, Darren, you make it such a pleasure to serve on the Dallas Federal Reserve Houston branch, so thank you for all you do. Dean Hartzell, we could not have a better leader at the McCombs School of Business, so thank you for inviting me. And I would also like to recognize my friend Scott Cavan, who is the person that got me on the Board of Regents the first time in 2008. Thank you, Scott, for that. I am very happy to be here to talk about the Port of Houston. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Port of Houston, performance at our 8 public docks, and I'm going to segue to the current and future state of the Houston Ship Channel, which is very important to our future. Now, all ports are significant, and they all claim to be first in something, but the Port of Houston is by far the most productive port in the nation. The Houston Ship Channel hosts the largest petrochemical complex in the world, which means that the Houston Ship Channel and our port is essential to the nation's energy security. We're also the #1 port in the nation for break bulk that includes steel and project cargo. We're home to the dominant container port in the Gulf, and we're the #1 U.S. port with regard to foreign waterborne tonnage. The most recent economic impact study reflects that economic activity at the Port of Houston, Greater Port of Houston generates more than $308 billion in economic impact and more than 1.3 million jobs in Texas alone. If you consider the national impact, it's probably in the range of double those numbers. Growth in commerce through our 8 Port Houston facilities continues to be strong, and we set another record for 2018. Tonnage across combined Port Houston docks totaled 40.8 million tons for 2018, a 7% increase over 2017. Commerce across Port Houston public wharves accounts for 20% of the tonnage of the entire Houston Ship Channel. Our public turning basin terminals, which is what handles break bulk, that includes steel and general cargo, project cargo, had another solid year. Much of the volume coming in, the steel imports that have grown pretty precipitously since 2017, have been in direct support of the oil and gas industry, including the imported pipe for drilling and project cargo for industrial demand. And as to steel, and as you saw from Mina's slides, steep declines in steel imports beginning in 2015 related to the reduction in oil and gas drilling and production activities. Steel rebounded very strongly in 2017 with an increase of 17%. And for 2018, we imported 4.3 million short tons for an increase of 21% over 2017. Let me talk about containers, because that's a very important business line to the Port of Houston Authority. Container growth through our 2 container terminals continues to be very robust. Increases are being driven not only by import demand, but also the exports of petrochemical products, including resins that have been manufactured in our region and are exported to India and to China for the manufacture of goods. 2018 volume is approximately 2.7 million 20-foot equivalent units, what we call TEUs in the maritime trade. Our container volumes have been growing by approximately 10% per year. 2017 was the first year that we saw significant growth in container volumes as a result of the expanded Panama Canal. And this is expected to continue in 2019 with a forecast of 2.9 million TEU, another 10% increase. Port Houston is the fastest growing container port in the nation, growing more than 2.5 times faster than the average U.S. port in container activity. And currently we capture 70% of the Gulf Coast containerized cargo. Container imports and exports are important to our economy and account for 80% of Port of Houston Authority revenue. Now, there's a really good reason for the fact that our container port is growing as fast as it is. First of all, we're very well located on the Gulf Coast with ready access to the Panama Canal. We have one of the fastest growing populations in the nation, and importantly, we have vast consumer reach. We can reach 142 million consumers within 1,000 miles of Port Houston. Our location, growth, consumer reach, coupled with best-in-class infrastructure, innovations to increase efficiency, and certainty in the supply chain because of stable labor relations that we've enjoyed over the last 20 to 25 years, has been a very strong competitive advantage for us to capture additional containerized cargo through the expanded Panama Canal. Overall revenue from our consolidated operations has grown from $232 million in 2013 to $366 million in 2018, a compounded annual growth rate of 10%. And we expect this to continue in 2019. Our budget forecast for 2019 is $400 million in gross revenue. Now, we all know that business and the market thrives on certainty, and it's no different for our business. Through strategic investments, including equipment, wharves, technology for our container terminals to make us more efficient, we are globally perceived and have proved to be a certain supply chain solution that has attracted this additional cargo through the Panama Canal into Port Houston. Since 2013, Port Houston has invested over $1 billion in capital projects while maintaining a strong margin and healthy liquidity. Our capital investments have been funded primarily with our cash flows. And that cash flow is generated primarily from our container operations. Now, the good news about this is because we've had such strong cash flows over the last few years, we have not had to go out for any public bonds since 2006. That's 12 years of being able to maintain our business without public money. In turn, these capital investments that we make from our cash flow drive additional demand because our valued customers know that choosing Port Houston guarantees certainty of unloading, market reach, and very efficient distribution through a vast supply chain network. So now, let me segue to the important topic of the Houston Ship Channel, which is really the lifeblood of the region and contributes so much to the Texas economy with about 20% of Texas GDP. So let me place this in context. The Houston Ship Channel that serves the Port of Houston is the busiest waterway in the nation, with nearly 9,000 deep draft vessel calls, 22,000 vessel movements if you consider vessels moving from dock to dock, and 200,000 barge transits annually. The Houston Ship Channel is equivalent from the standpoint of the vessel traffic to the ports of LA, Long Beach, and New York, New Jersey combined. With this exceptional level of traffic, including rapidly growing container and tanker traffic, it's imperative to assure that the channel is wide enough to accommodate these larger vessels that are calling on our channel, and to assure that safety is not only preserved, but enhanced. The Port of Houston Authority, the organization that I represent, is the local sponsor of the Houston Ship Channel. That means that we work with the Army Corps of Engineers on channel improvement and maintenance projects. We have to constantly dredge our channel to keep it maintained at its authorized depth of 45 feet and width of 530 feet. We get constant siltation from any runoff. Anytime we have rain, and especially with the flood, we get a lot of siltation in the channel. We take our responsibility to protect and improve the Houston Ship Channel very, very seriously because it is so important to our economy. Now, while maintenance dredging of the Houston Ship Channel is the federal government's obligation, it is a federal navigational waterway, the allocation of federal funds for maintenance dredging has fallen far short of what we need to maintain our channel at its authorized depth and width. So let's talk a little bit about this funding mechanism and why we have a deficit. Roughly $100 million is collected annually in federal harbor maintenance tax based upon the value of imported cargo. Much of that harbor maintenance tax revenue comes from the containerized cargo that comes into our port and is discharged at Bayport Container Terminal. The tax revenue collected on the value of import cargo is then deposited into the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, which is intended to fund maintenance dredging projects around the nation. However, the federal government then appropriates that money as it sees fit. It doesn't always go to harbor maintenance projects. The federal appropriations for the Houston Ship Channel averages around $30 million a year, which is approximately 30% of what the government collects from our users of the channel, and far short of the $50 to $60 million that we need to adequately maintain our channel. So you might wonder what we do about this. We are constantly advocating with our federal delegation to try to change this outcome, get more money for maintenance dredging, and working, on trying to close this deficit. In addition, we continually look for opportunities to work with the Army Corps of Engineers to either improve the channel or to have other maintenance dredging projects to assure that we can keep that channel flowing at the most efficient, depth. We strongly advocated for and supported amendments to the Water Resources Development Act of 2014, and we did that in asking the Army Corps of Engineers to fund a study that would permit the widening and deepening of our channel. It's really important that we widen our channel because of the size of the ships that are in our calling on our facilities, both the tankers and container ships. So the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is undertaking a mega study that is supposed to be completed sometime this year. We're requesting that our channel be widened to 700 feet from the current 530 feet, and that it be deepened beyond 45 feet to assure that there's a greater cushion so that when we have the next flooding event, the next rain event, we won't have significant shoaling in the channel that interferes with two-way traffic in the channel. And although there's no doubt that the federal return on investment for improvements to our channel, whether it's widening or deepening, is unparalleled by any measure when you consider the importance of the Houston Ship Channel to our energy security and our economic security. The Corps Navigation Study highlights a flaw in the way the federal government does this. They, in their national economic model, they only consider depth. They do not consider widening as a benefit for return on investment. And of course, that's the most important aspect of this study, is to get this channel widened so that we can accommodate these larger ships with two-way traffic. The Corps Mega Study nearing the final phase in 2019. And so in anticipation of this, we're constantly advocating, again with our federal delegation. Senator Cornyn's been very helpful. The Assistant Secretary of the Army is working with us to try to wire around this federal economic model that doesn't take widening into consideration. And we're hoping that we can get this channel widened at federal expense to meet our unique needs. But pending widening of the channel, which is the long-term fix to assure that there's two-way traffic of these larger vessels, the key to minimizing congestion is very careful coordination. And so let me address that. Shippers and carriers, whether for container vessels or oil tanking, look for efficiencies in shipping. Now, this, of course, includes consolidating more and more product on larger vessels. Now, eventually, that will mean we'll have fewer ships coming into the channel, which is a good thing, but the ships are larger, and they require more width of the channel in order to function efficiently. Historically, the container vessels that have called on our container facilities have been vessels that carry under 8,000 TEU. On vessels that historically have not exceeded 1,096 feet in length. Beginning in August of 2018, at least one carrier has been utilizing a 9,500 TEU vessel that calls on our Bayport container facility that is 1,105 feet in length. At about the same time, the Houston pilots that are responsible for the safe and efficient navigation of ship traffic in the channel instituted a combined length rule that any vessel over 1,100 feet will be limited to daylight hours and one-way traffic. Now, this was done to assure safe navigation as the pilots learned to maneuver these larger vessels. Not the first time it's happened. When we started bringing in the 8,000 TEU vessels, they had the same restriction for a while. Now, when that happened, some of the larger petrochemical exporters expressed concern about potential one-way traffic, citing the growing production out of the Permian Basin that will ultimately come to the Gulf Coast for processing and export. And of course, they question whether their business will be impacted negatively by congestion, potential one-way traffic. The Pilot Board of Commissioners, which is the body that oversees the pilots, charged under state law to assure that there are processes in place for notification and oversight, and their licensing, established, in order to try to deal with this issue, established a working group including container interests, petrochemical tanker interests, the Houston pilots, and other stakeholders to come up with some thinking, some thoughtful solutions about how we address the pilot's rule for daylight hours, one-way traffic for these larger container vessels. And of course, this is an interim solution pending widening of the channel or the pilot's lifting of the restriction. Now, the pilots have informed us and the working group and the pilot board that they will release this restriction over time pending their comfort with moving these larger vessels. And they've also advised us that they can move one large vessel a day without undue delay or congestion. Now, to do our part as the Port of Houston Authority, we have committed in order to minimize impact to the petrochemical industry, which we honor and which we know is very important to our economy. We're committed to coordinate with the pilots to assure that any vessel over 1,100 feet comes in at dawn and gets to the container facility by 9 o'clock in the morning, leaving the channel open for two-way traffic for the petrochemical industry for the rest of the day. And we remain committed to coordinate these efforts with the pilots to minimize and eliminate any delay to the petrochemical industry, pending, of course, the pilots becoming comfortable, lifting the restriction, and then, of course, the ultimate widening of the port of Houston Ship Channel that will correct this deficit. So I'm very proud about our results over the last 6 years. Yes, I am coming to the end of my term. I'm term limited. And so my term ends on January 31st of this month. And my successor is a very fine person by the name of Rick Campo. You may know him from Camden Property Interest. He'll do a fine job. We've done our business in partnership with stakeholders all over the region, all over the state, all over the nation, and with many of you. And so I thank you for your partnership over the years. As we like to say at the Port of Houston, may the wind be at your back and the world at your feet. Thank you all for your very kind attention and for being a supporter of the Port of Houston Authority.
Thank you very much, Janiece. When this gig's over, if you want to come teach, just let me know. Now it's my honor and privilege to introduce Scott Prochazka. Scott and I, we were actually reminiscing, go back a ways. When I first got to UT in 2001, I was teaching the MBA core finance class, and we met then because he was trying to find the best and brightest MBAs he could lure here to Centerpoint. He is now the president and CEO of Centerpoint Energy, a recognized leader in delivering natural gas and electricity within the continental United States. Prior to his current role, Prochazka served in several other roles, including COO with responsibility for all business units and several key functions, division president of Houston Electric, and a senior division VP of gas operations. In these roles, he had broad responsibility for operating and financial performance of each respective group. Before joining Centerpoint Energy, Prochazka worked for Dow Chemical, where he had held roles in sales, purchasing, product management, asset management, supply chain management, strategy development, and new business development. Scott is active today as chairman of Gridwise Alliance, an executive committee board member of Junior Achievement of Southeast Texas, the Greater Houston Partnership, and Central Houston, Inc. He's a board member of the United Way of Houston, Edison Electric Institute, Electric Power Research Institute, the American Gas Association, and the Kinder Institute Advisory Board. He's a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin, where he earned a BS in chemical engineering. With that, please welcome Scott to the stage.
Well, good morning, everyone. How about that bowl game? Nice to see you, huh? As Jay said, I am a graduate of the university and love any chance I have to go back and visit the campus. But I have a confession to make. I have a student there at the moment. My second boy is there. He's graduating out of the engineering program this year. But the real confession is I've got two kids that are at OU. One that's graduated. I know I'm putting it out there so everyone can hear me say it. One that's graduated and one that's there now. So needless to say, in our family, I thoroughly enjoyed October. I didn't enjoy December quite as much. But it is great to see. It's great to see the program doing well, and it's great to see all aspects of the university doing well. So Jay, thank you for the invitation to be here. Darren, thanks for opening the building and hosting here. And it's always a pleasure to be on a panel or speaking with a good friend, Janiece, who is a great community leader, as you all know, and a former director at Centerpoint Energy. And I really enjoyed your comments as well. So it's great to be here today. Now, let me start by saying welcome to 2019. I'm going to call this the age of disruption. We're smack in the middle of the age of disruption. If you think about it, the businesses we see today are very different than what we've seen in the past. In fact, today the largest cab company has no cabs at all. The largest hotel company has no hotels and no rooms. And one of the most successful production companies don't even show their movies in theaters. Speaking, of course, of platforms like Netflix. Reading a statistic here that Bird Box has had more than 45 million views as a way of showing just how successful these alternative models are. And Amazon, as we all know, has really set the bar for customer service, what it means to be able to interact with a service provider. And these all create levels of disruption. They create opportunity, but they certainly create disruption. And today I want to talk about disruption and I want to talk about innovation. I think innovation is the response to disruption, or maybe they're related just the other way around. Maybe innovation creates disruption. Whatever the right relationship, I do think they are tightly connected. Amazon has created things that we didn't know we need. I think a lot of companies are getting good at that these days. We have, for example, at our house something called buttons. I don't know if anyone out here has Amazon buttons. My wife discovered them, but they're a little device you put in your home and you locate it right next to a product that you use on a regular basis, because when you consume that product, the time you know you need that product again is right when you finish using it. So how convenient would it be to have that reorder button right there where you keep the product? That's how we order dog food. It's how we order, tissue. It's how we order a number of things around the house. I didn't ask for that. I didn't, in fact, even know I needed that. They told me I needed it, and they were right, evidently. I did need that, and we have several of them. They're masters at this, right? And that's how I think all of us need to think as we think about innovation. I'm constantly being asked questions, when I go out and I spend time with colleagues and others in our industry. What's the next great customer service solution? What's happening in your business with respect to robotics or artificial intelligence or the use of sensors? What about big data, machine learning? What will be the next big development in our space? I mean, this is something that we talk about during the cocktail hours at any of these industry events we go to. So we're living it. And even a company like ours, which I'll review in just a second what we do, which traditionally may be thought of as a little bit less innovative than other sectors, even we are dealing with this. And I'll share with you what we're doing individually as a company and what the industry is working on. But that's where we are today. Disruption and innovation are all part of a regular conversation that's happening each and every day. So who are we? Real quick, I will not spend much time on this, but I think it's good for everyone to know who we are as a company. We are a energy delivery company that has really 3 different key business areas. We own and operate the electric delivery grid in and around the greater Houston area. All of you, I assume, are Texans and know that we have a deregulated electric market. That happened 16, 17 years ago. And at that point, the only regulated portion of the energy delivery chain are the wires, everything from the meter back to the transformer at the generation source. We own everything, all that stuff in between. You can see some of the statistics about how big we are. It is a significant portion of our business. We also own and operate natural gas distribution. So this is the utility part. Those of you, again, here in Houston, get your gas bills from Centerpoint. We own and operate the gas distribution systems in 6 states. We have about 3.5 million customers. Then we have a competitive energy business piece, which provides energy delivery alternatives to customers who are either big enough or are in an environment where they are not required to take regulated energy delivery service. So it's about being able to give our customers options. We are led by a set of, I'll say, guiding elements. We have a vision that's geared around being a leader in our space. I'm going to show you what I mean by leader. As I look at our vision, to me, that is the most important part of this, is being a leader. But the other thing we did several years ago was expand our vision from being delivery of energy to delivery of service and value, really in strong recognition of the changing climate around customers. Our strategy is very simple. We have to operate our assets. We have to serve our customers well. If we do both of those, we earn the right to grow. And with respect to our values, I want to put this up here because values set culture. Culture becomes a more important part of what I want to talk about in a minute when you talk about innovation. Values really set your culture. So making sure that our values are properly aligned to deliver on the needs of our customers and do so in a way that reflects how we envision working together. So where have we been? You know, I'd say maybe a decade or so ago, we used to talk about disruption as an event that occurred every year, every couple of years. It just seemed to be a big event. We had time to talk about it, we had time to plan for it, we had time to react to it. Today, disruption seems to occur weekly. It seems to come much more frequently. In the past, I would consider disruption to be a noun. It was an event. Today, I consider disruption to be a verb. I think it is active. It's something that's occurring all around us at all times. We've focused our innovative response or our innovation to disruption around several key areas. One is around modernizing the grid. We have installed on our system more than 2.5 million smart meters. They've been out there for a decade, believe it or not, and they've been providing meaningful benefits. They've saved us over $100 million in O&M costs. Our customers, many of you are customers of ours, it saved customers $25 million annually in fees. And with these meters, we no longer have to go to visit homes on a regular basis. We have much better information, much more real-time information about what's going on. After all, we are a multi-billion-dollar company. Why should you be more informed about what's going on with our assets than we are? We should be the ones who know what's going on with our assets and our system. These meters have allowed us to take ownership of that objective. It brings some environmental benefits. We've avoided emissions of about 15,000 tons of CO2 just from avoided truck rolls of our trucks in the field. It's also helped with congestion in traffic. Our intelligent grid, which is coupled with our meters, this is an investment we put on our grid that allows the least number of customers to be isolated when there's an outage. So we have a circuit go down. The smart grid will allow us to identify where that is. We can open some switches and we can route around all but the smallest number of customers. We do that today. We don't do it everywhere in our system, but we do it. We're doing it more and more in our system. Where we have that investment made, our reliability has improved by 25%. We now know where these faults are occurring. We can direct crews to them, and they can get there on a more timely basis because they know where they're going. They're not looking for a problem, and we have some insight as to what the problem is. So we send the right crew and the right people. They know what they need to be working on. We have predictive analytics in our customer care area. Every call we get, we run about 17 million bytes of data to identify why somebody's calling, and we direct the IVR to ask some questions that are most relevant. We have a power alert service today, which allows us to identify where we have an outage and tell you before you know it. Many times you may not be at home. We'll tell you your power's out. You can make alternate plans. We'll tell you how long we think it's going to be out, and then we'll confirm when it's back on. We have the trucks in there show where we have a brand new leak detection technology for our gas systems. They allow us to, these systems are 1,000 times more sensitive than traditional. We can pinpoint leak locations and go to those locations very quickly and have those repairs made in a very rapid fashion. The dog there, believe it or not, is actually a dog that's trained to sniff out gas leaks. Being able to use animals, this is another form of innovation. Innovation is something that we've been doing, but what we really lack is what I'll consider as a strong culture around innovation. And what we learned about innovation being successful is you don't have time to implement a cultural change the way we traditionally have done it. I think the way industry's traditionally done it is you get your senior leadership team together, you define what the problem is, you put a senior leader in charge, and then you start to work on it and it cascades down. That is the old way of getting things done. It needs to be more rapid. So we have a top-down, we have a leadership supported, but we also have a group of individuals that are younger, they think more innovatively. We ask them, what do we need to change with our culture? So that is what they are doing in the bottom-up approach, this innovation incubator team, a group of 35 younger individuals. We ask them to tell us what we need to do to accelerate this. So we work our efforts from the top, and we work the efforts from the bottom of the organization, all geared around accelerating the change to an environment that's more innovative than we've been in the past. And innovation, to me, is defined as problem solving, or problem finding and problem solving. It's not just problem finding. You got to be able to solve the problem. Invention is great. You can create things, and brand new, may not exist before, but we want to focus on being able to solve a problem with it. So it's problem finding and problem solving. We know that we have to hit messages over and over and over again if we are going to get a cultural change to stick. So a very strong communication plan that allows our employees to have the tools they need, the freedom to be innovative, not only the obligation but the opportunity to challenge in a constructive way. We've created a phrase called reject, find, and drive. It's something that's very prominent that we display. It gives people license to challenge what we've traditionally done. It's about rejecting the status quo is the only way to do things, finding alternatives, which is a collaborative exercise, and driving things into an implementation mode. That's what reject, find, drive stands for. It's been very effective for us. The challenge that we have, and we've got to make sure we manage, is while we want to be innovative and challenge and do new things, we have to acknowledge that we have billions of dollars of assets that are in the ground that have to run reliably each and every day. So we have to be a company that values kind of a traditional, tried and true approach to managing billions of dollars of assets, but at the same time have capability in the organization to say, I realize that's how we do it, but have we thought about this? And both of those conversations become acceptable. We are transitioning more to that. We haven't had that environment to the way in the way we would like it. So this campaign and this effort is all geared around allowing us to get there. What do I think are the key influences and going to continue to be the key influences? They're the things I talked about when I opened up. It has to do with customers changing needs, and this page represents a number of things that are changing within our customer mix. Customers have different requirements for energy, either the quality, the pricing style, the assurance of it. There are a number of things that that customers are looking for that are non-standard. And other industries, other service sectors have been able to adapt and provide that. We have to come up with our own version of that. And then the interface of technology. I'm talking technology for operations, our operations, technology at our customer sites, technology that allows basically you and I and everyone else to conduct so much business off a little device that's in your pocket right now. We can do so much on that device. We can do it when we want, at our convenience. It's very much the way of the future, and we need to be mindful of that as we think about our solutions. So what's going on in the industry? And I'll wrap up here shortly. Blockchain was mentioned earlier about an opportunity in the space. Blockchain is a great example of being able to create chain of custody for certain environments. When I think about cyber issues, of which I'm greatly concerned for our sector, how can we use blockchain to help us better track the elements of our supply chain so that we understand where we might have some intrusion from a cyber standpoint? The upper right graph is 3D printing. 3D printing, I think, is going to be a huge development going forward. It's very energy intensive, but it also gives you the ability to have your supply chain on site. If we have a part or a piece that breaks, why not just make it in our shop as opposed to having to go place an order and have it shipped from some other place? Electric vehicles, I could go on for a long time on this. Electric vehicles are coming. They're even coming to Texas where we drive trucks. I drive a pickup truck. Electric vehicles are coming. It's because the manufacturers are building, they're putting so much effort into this. The costs are coming down, and they're designing products that deliver good, solid benefits to a broader set of communities, or a broader set of customers. As a community, we need to be prepared to handle this coming in. And then finally, on the right, you can just see some advanced training techniques, devices that will allow employees to be safer in their work environments, allow people to be able to do better, more thorough diagnostics. The job intelligence can move from just being in someone's head to being in a device that is readily transferable. So these are the types of things that are going to influence our business. One last thing, I'll just close with this comment. We're in the middle of a transaction at the moment. We are merging with another company, primarily a utility company out of Indiana. The name is Vectron Energy. And we announced it last May. Hopefully we will close on sometime in the first quarter. We're very excited about this. This adds several million customers to our base. We will be one of the largest utilities and energy delivery companies in the U.S. Once this is closed. We'll have over 7 million metered customers in about 8 states, and we'll have competitive operations in almost 40 states around the U.S. So this gives us an opportunity to grow our scale, to take some of our learnings that are innovative in nature and be able to extend those to customers in both the company that we're acquiring as well as what we can learn from the company that's coming in. So we're very excited about the industry. There's a lot going on. Hopefully, those of you that think we're a little bit archaic and slow can see that we're doing our best. We're trying to be innovative and progressive, and we're trying to do this, and we are doing this with the customer in mind. Because in the end, that's what matters. We all, as a company, we only exist because we have our customers. So great to be here today. Jay, thank you for the invitation, and with that, I'll conclude. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Scott. And we wanted to leave some time for Q&A, so we'll take about 10 minutes or so and ask our panelists some questions. You've got things on your table. You've got cards you can fill out to write down questions. We've also got people wandering around with microphones if you'd prefer that to writing. So maybe I'll start and give you all some time to think about what you want to ask. I think of largely what the university does is being in the talent business. And May talked about tight labor markets, and that is a challenge. Could you all speak to what you're seeing in sort of the war for talent, whether it's from the port or what you see in the broader landscape, Janiece or Scott? What do you see in your company as the ability to attract people? What's it like in the labor markets out there?
Is this on? I don't think mine is working. You don't hear me back?
I just said.
Hello.
Okay, this is much better, yes. Look, I think the talent market is as strong as it's ever been. We have a number of great needs, and as our industry evolves, we're able to tell a better story about why individuals should get excited about coming to work for a company like Centerpoint. I will say it's tight, and it's often difficult in a tighter market to be able to get talent to come in and participate in our space. But I do think that we know that we have to spend additional time with institutions and really focus in areas that I think we're the tightest, and that is really around the operating labor force, the labor force that is going to be out in the field doing that type of work. It's become more challenging.
Hello?
Hello? It's become more challenging to get individuals to pursue those types of careers, and we have a job to do to make sure that kind of middle market is robust and educated enough for those roles and understands what those opportunities look like. Many people don't know it, but our electric linemen are very well paid. You have an opportunity to make a six-figure income as an electric lineman once you're in a more senior position. So we need to make sure we get those stories out.
Okay, well, we're a governmental agency, and so we are having to compete with private industry for top quality talent, which makes it more difficult for us because we can't pay the same salaries necessarily, hello? That private industry can pay. But I will say that we do offer an incredible opportunity for people that want to work in the maritime industry at Port Houston. And frankly, I think the experience is so positive. I mean, Gilda Ramirez is a good example. The experience is so positive that we have very little turnover. However, when we go out to the market to hire another engineer or someone with a higher level of skill, it is becoming increasingly difficult for us to attract that talent because of the tight labor market and competing for those resources with not as much to offer on the salary range. I would like to say, though, that one of the things that we've done to increase participation, and I want to give Gilda credit for this, that we started a maritime education program at Port Houston about 12 years ago. And we thought it was important to increase the maritime industry pipeline with qualified people if you get them early. You know, get people in high school, send them to a two-year institution, 4-year college. And so that had become very, very successful to get people interested in maritime industry careers that are very, very good careers. And then we decided that we needed to get the kids even earlier. So we've now included middle schools in our program. So we get those kids in the 6th grade. We follow them through high school and they continue to be in our program. And then they either go to a junior college or to a 4-year college and continue with the program and get into very lucrative maritime careers. We have as many young women as we do men in those programs. I will say that maritime industry is very male-centric, always has been. But we're seeing those numbers change in logistics, warehousing, engineering, and some of those other fields. So more to come.
I'll just add something from our surveys.
Sure.
So as I had mentioned, we do these monthly manufacturing and services surveys, and when we asked them about labor market tightness and where they had the most trouble finding workers, it was really middle skill workers. So they could find the higher and the lower, it was just the middle skill that they were having trouble. And when we asked them, what are you doing about it? Well, about 45% were increasing wages greater than 4%. And then the rest were also increasing wages, but not as high as 4%. So they're increasing wages and benefits to try to get those mid-skill level workers.
Great. Thanks, Monet. I was thinking about, we have the same problem at the business school trying to retain talent, the university as a whole. We had a week where we lost 2 people from one office to Google. And that's a hard competition between the university and Google. So who in the audience would like to ask a question? Let me open it up. What would you all like to hear from our panelists? Please, Nilafar.
So just maybe following that same trend on resources, are you starting to look at resources and talent and experience that people have that's different than what you have hired in the past? Given, Scott, you talked a lot about innovation, what you're trying to drive in your organization, that may require a different talent that you've had before. Would love to hear your perspectives on that.
Yeah, we are doing exactly what you described, and that is as we think about the future state and the technologies that will be involved and how we solve customer solutions and operating solutions, our mix of employee will change. You know, as somebody retires, the days are gone where you look at that skill set and you replace that exact skill set. We start asking more and more questions around things like data scientists. We don't traditionally have a bunch of data scientists. We are adding more data scientists because we understand that data coupled with analytics, coupled with operators who understand problems, create the formula for a solution. So being able to bring data scientists in, being able to bring people that have not only maybe operating knowledge from an engineering standpoint, a traditional engineering standpoint, but they've got some knowledge about the interplay between electric or technology systems, because there's so much interplay between IT and OT, and everything is real time these days. You know, long gone are the days when everything would batch run at night. You come back and you had everything, you know, refreshed and ready to go for the next day, and then your data was static for the day. That's not how our systems operate. They are real-time live systems. So the need to have people who understand those systems at a different level are great.
Other question? Please, Chuck.
So, what's going to happen with PG&E, and what lessons have we learned from that?
So the question was, what's going to happen with PG&E? This is a really sad story about, the demise of a company. I'm going to say an entire industry within a state, but certainly a company that was affected by bad policy. I mean, that's what's really driven this. They're going to go through a bankruptcy proceeding the second time in 15 years. This company has been bankrupt, but it's policy driven. The learning on this was every business needs to understand what its key risks are as a function of not just operation, but compliance and whatever the local laws are. Fortunately, in Texas, we don't have this inverse condemnation type of law that they have out there that is so challenging for them. So we're not faced with that same type. We don't have that law in any of the states that we're in. But it does say you have to understand what your risks are. I'll give you an example. In the south part of California, Edison has recognized this threat about being liable for the damage to everything if they were determined to be at fault for causing a fire. So they are now heavily into the fire suppression business. So they now own and operate fire stations. They have helicopters, and they have monitoring devices that are placed throughout their service territory that can pick up heat sources instantly. And once they pick one of those up, they dispatch a helicopter out, and they're out to put the fire out. They have had to move into fire suppression business. So I think key part of this answer is you got to understand your environment and therefore know what your key risks are and how to respond. Secondly, if we were to see some policy or some legislation that were this onerous, you've got to get on it and get it changed long before it becomes the type of problem PG&E is dealing with.
Go ahead, please.
John Barsh, Chevron, so let's have a question for Janiece. How does government shutdown affect the report, and if it continues to extend, what repercussions do you see down the line?
We haven't seen any impact from the government shutdown to our operations. Now, we do have Customs and Border Protection personnel on our premises, and to the extent that they have to be there after hours, we pay them ourselves. But they're considered essential personnel, so there hasn't been any reduction in our operations or our ability to move product through the port.
Thank you. Questions? Please.
Regional Longoria, with the expansion of capabilities of the Port of Corpus Christi, is that friend or foe to the Houston Port Authority? And then with Dr. Yücel, how do you see the expansion of Corpus Christi affecting the Houston and Texas economy?
Look, Port of Corpus Christi is a good friend of ours, and frankly, all the ports in Texas are sister ports, and we all work together to assure that everybody's healthy and we can get legislation, Texas law passed that benefits us all. And so I'm glad to see that they're expanding. I think there's going to be, there's such an embarrassment of riches coming out of the Permian Basin in the future. And I know that Corpus Christi is expanding its export opportunities for a lot of that production. That doesn't compete directly with the Port of Houston Authority, since 80% of our revenue comes from container operations. And to the extent we have petrochemical exports, it's coming from the Exxon, as an example, manufactures resins, gets loaded in containers, and so we export that. So I don't see any direct competition from Corpus Christi, and frankly, I think we need as much export capability as possible coming out of the Gulf Coast.
I would second what Janiece said in terms of we need as much port capability as we can to handle all those exports that will be coming out. 2 points here. The Gulf Coast, as you know, is the largest petrochemical complex in the nation. So we have a lot of petrochemical plants, and if you look at the announced plants and the ones that are already in construction, there's a huge slew of plants coming online, maybe end of this year, maybe next year. So you need a large port to be able to handle all that. One other point to make, though, is when oil prices are high and when gas is low, there's a big differential between the two. So we base our petrochemicals on gas, and the rest of the world actually uses oil-based. So when those differentials are high, actually it's great for us. Right now, with oil prices low, that has narrowed somewhat. But overall, looking forward, you need all the export capability that you can get to get those exports out to the rest of the world.
Thanks. I think we're almost out of time. How about one last question? Please.
This question is for anyone on the panel. Where do you see interest rates going in 2019?
That's for Mina.
Yeah. Interest rates, so yeah, where do you see, I know Monet can't answer because she's going to claim this whole blackout thing. But anybody else want to take on, I guess another way to frame it too, where do you see it going and/or how much does it affect your business? So do you think, Scott, do you want to talk about interest rate sensitivity? Do you worry about it? Do you have an outlook on the macro economy and rates?
Well, I think we all believe, based on what's actually been told to us, that rates will continue to go up. By what rate and how much, I think, is what's being debated. Generally speaking, interest rates affect us as a borrower. We will spend, once our transactions close, we'll spend $2.2 to $2.5 billion a year on infrastructure needed for reliability, safety, and growth of our businesses. We do not generate that much free cash flow. So we're constantly in the market looking for debt and occasionally for some new equity to be able to fund this infrastructure need. Interest rates obviously increase our costs, which ultimately increase the cost of putting those assets in. I'd say a lesser impact would be to the extent interest rates continue to rise at a rate that creates inflation. You might see some economic slowdown. And that would affect maybe the growth aspect of revenue streams coming into our business. But I would say on the margin, that's fairly modest. Our biggest impact is just in terms of financing costs.
Janiece, you from the port, do you see effects from rates, or is it more just macroeconomy, consumption?
It's really more macro, and we don't see, because most of our infrastructure is driven by our cash flows. Our cash flows have been very strong, as you saw from the slides. So that's not impacting us particularly. I'd just say on a personal basis, and having listened to announcements from the Fed, they're going to be very data-driven on what they decide to do in the future. Have no idea what that's going to be. But I do detect, and from Monet's slides, I do detect quite a bit of market uncertainty. I think consumer sentiment is depressed, and I think that's going to have some effects on the economy moving forward that will contribute to that data that the Federal Reserve is looking at.
Great. Well, thank you all. Thanks again to our panelists. I want to, hopefully we got the good year off to a good start with the Sugar Bowl. And hopefully we'll see continued success both in terms of energy and in Texas and in the sector. Thank you all for coming out. If you have suggestions or things you'd like to see us tweak, let one of us know. If you also would like to get more involved back at the university, please do let one of us know. We'd love to get you back to campus, whether it's the business school, engineering school, show you around and what's been changing. A lot has been changing on campus, and I think you'd enjoy that opportunity. So with that, thanks again to all of you. Thank you all for coming. Have a good day and good morning.
Thank you.